Recordio. Yeah, it's recording-io. Sort of. Well, managed to make the button work again, although it conked out last time. Well, listen. Hello, hello, hello. Bit of a shake around in here. We've got rather a lot of bubble wrap everywhere. I bought my bulk order 2 very large bales. And that just means it's everywhere in the spare room. I actually had to unwind the roll a bit to get it inside the house. Anyway, 1 big roll's here, some spare here, 1 big roll upstairs, and some spare rolls. Anyway, so listen, I've got Alex's new arrival here, and this is funny. This is an Encore. I think it's an Indian made one, but it's an early one, and it's an interesting beast because it's in a real shitty state. It's a charity shop find, and it's, I don't know, about 30 quid's worth or something. But it's interesting because it has very rounded edges, which makes me think that we're dealing with a ply beastie here. We got strings that are, just out of interest, 1 trillion times out of tune, probably way too tight. Let's have a listen to what this note is, if I can get the batteries to work on here. Oh, A sharp only. Not as far out as I thought. Anyway, so we've got yeah, sort of reasonable neck, and not quite as pretty as some of them from India, but maybe it's not Indian, but I think it is still. It could do with some refinishing really, but frets are all okay. It's not really been played that much. It's just left to get completely grungy. Pickups, cellophane's still on it, pickups filthy. Bridge is actually canted forward in a sort of floating mode, but it's pretty horrible. I suppose it would be interesting to see if anything sounds like anything. So, but really, this is just a punt. Oh my god, well, that ain't much good. Let's not even worry about that for the time being. Jack plugs falling out. So really, this is take this apart as fast as possible, and just give Alex a heads up on whether it's worth doing anything to. So let's just look. I mean, first things first, the neck appears to have quite a considerable relief to it. It could well be that Truss Rod has been hammered, and we shall have a check and see if that even works at all. But I'm just going to pull everything off and put it all in a container, and then we'll sort of look at what we've got and see whether it's worth doing anything with. But I have to be very straight. I mean, Alex is he got it for practically nothing, so he doesn't mind spending a little bit on it, but I think we've just got to be realistic about what's possible here. I've also got another guitar coming, another sort of auction win that Paul won, and it's a Marlin, which I've seen a few of, and usually on the Marlins the necks are completely knackered, twisted, permanently bent and so on, and there's been very little in the way of saving them that I've been able to do. So the best I've done is re-neck them, which I've done a couple of times to actually the body, the big sort of full-size wood body, very light wood, but nevertheless a wood body. It can be quite good, nice. It's suddenly gone all humid in this neck of the woods. Okay, so I mean, let's just get this straight into bits. Really, there's no point keeping it as one. I mean, I've taken some pictures so I can show Alex the state of it, but it's a pretty utterly and thoroughly unplayable thing as it stands. So first thing, let's get the neck off and see what we're dealing with body wise. Well, we'll see if we can make the neck do anything for a start. If it doesn't, then what I'm going to do is have a kind of send an email back to Alex and just let him know what I've found, and we can make a decision from that point onwards. But sometimes you've got to be realistic about these and send them on their way. Now this has slightly gunged up neck bolts, which suggests it's been kept, I think means it's partly been kept in a damp environment. It doesn't feel damp right now, it feels quite dry, so who knows where it's been and how long it's been there. It's got the typical cheap pressed tin sort of metal tuners. Okay, yeah, ply as expected. Okay, so first thing to do, let's have a feel of the truss rod in this beauty and see if we can actually do anything. Now currently, with the strings off, actually it isn't that bad. That's probably exaggerating, but let's crank a bit of. I have a feeling there's not much life left in this, which would be a pity. Let's start by getting a good bite on it. See if we can get an arch into it, because we really want to be able to flatten it out. Okay. Yeah, that's working actually. Well done. So typical, reasonable rosewood. The frets, as I say, aren't that bad on this. Hardly been played, so I think we can get something out of that without having to worry too much about refretting, which would, to be honest, would be again an uneconomic thing. Now, what we've got here is an unusual body in that it's ply. Now I don't know whether this makes it an Indian or a Chinese one. I can't really recall seeing ply in the Chinese department, but it's really hard to say because this is an odd era. Now the Indian ones are quite distinguished, easy to spot. The body shape is slightly different from this, but the problem here is this is impossible to see from an eBay listing, so you basically have to go with what you get and take a punt. And in this case, I think if it works out, oh, well, that was pretty good. It's not even grounded anyway, so yeah, you're taking a punt, really, simple as that. So let's see if we can get everything off. The two-handed grip isn't working. I've lost me lifter thing. Kind of, that's a bit annoying. I probably have to find another piece of suitable plastic to help me raise the Titanic. Something like this will do. Just get a little start on it. Ideally, you'd have two pieces like this, helping you to prise it off, or two spoons is usually quite a good way, but a little bit of a push like this usually works. So I'm just using this to give it a little encouragement to lift up. This is an old electrics cover. Usually I can get in there with my hands, or alternatively I never buy this thing. I've never bought this thing. Everyone says, oh, buy that knob lifter tool. I really ought to, but you can get a piece of cloth and pull up like that. The problem is, regardless of what you use, there's no way of getting them off without putting some considerable force on the shaft of the pot. That's how it is. That's the only way you're going to get the things off. They're pushed on under friction with the splines on the knob. Yeah, a bit of rust on there, so this has been unloved for some time. I'm kind of half expecting one of these to shear off any minute. You can hear how crappy that is. Ooh, ready, stand by. Any minute now it's going to shear. Bloody steamy in here. I'll tell you why, it's 20 degrees. This is this weird summer. It's our third wedding anniversary today. We've been together since 2003, so 15 years, but we've been married 3. And so we spent today down at the beach in glorious sunshine. And while that was there, a woman, there's a cafe at the beach. It's in Seaton in Cornwall, if you've ever been down there. It's beautiful. And there's a sort of beach cafe, a lovely old rambling driftwoody sort of built beach cafe. It's been there for years and it's traditional, we always go there. And there's sort of benches indoors, outdoors, undercover, half undercover. It's just a great place. And we went down there, and while we were sitting there, an old lady fell off the bench onto her back on the floor. She sort of tripped herself up on the bench, and there you go. And anyway, the people she was with, or some people tried to help her up, and they weren't getting anywhere. So, like a hero, I got up to go. This is not coming undone. I got up to go and help, and succeeded in lifting her up from behind. I very politely asked her permission before I did it, and as I did it, I could feel this hot iron twang in my back. You know, that basically my back just gave out. So I sort of staggered away, looking macho and capable, and went and sat back down with sort of a look of absolute horror on my face. Claire was going, "You shouldn't have done that. I told you shouldn't have done that." And she was right, I shouldn't have. And there was no way to lift this woman with a correct. These are not very nice. There was no technically correct way of lifting her, because I couldn't get under her enough to get my weight over on my knees. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so I felt very noble. And then after that, we went for a stroll, a long walk down the beach, and we each took a rubbish picker. And Claire was on the lookout for driftwood for various little things she makes, and I was just collecting rubbish, plastic basically. And I've been sort of moved to do that for a long time, and I hadn't got around to doing it, so I finally picked up the oomph to go and do it, and it was really nice. And actually I would have liked to have maybe gone there on my own, taken an audio book or something, and just walked for hours picking up stuff. It was such a nice feeling to be spotting stuff, putting it in the bag and taking it out of the environment as much as possible. So I will do it again. And then anyway, I got all of this stuff. This is not wanting to come out. Got all the stuff, about half a big rubbish sack full of plastic of all sizes. I tried to get even the tiniest bits and all the polystyrene and stuff. And came back to the cafe, and they had a skip, big dumpster thing out there, and I emptied it into there without really asking them. And then I went inside and said, "Look, you know, I've just emptied some beach plastic from the beach onto the into that skip. You know, I hope you don't mind." "No, that's fine." And I said, why don't you guys make a feature out of it, because the time is right over here. There's a lot of people having recently watched various TV shows going into the depths of this problem we have with plastic and so on. So it's on everybody's minds at the moment, you know, what we're doing to the environment. I know there's a lot of school type activities at the moment where kids go out and pick up rubbish on the beaches, and I think it's just a really good time now to make that possible. So, you know, for the sake of buying in a few litter pickers, having a few rubble sacks handy, you know, maybe just letting people go out, encouraging them to use them, and then maybe come back and get a free cup of coffee for dumping a load of stuff, and having a permanent dumpster or skip. Oh God, this is bent as hell. Having a permanent dumpster sitting there, you know, with maybe the bags and the pickers hanging from the side, and you know, make a big deal, a splash on Facebook on their cafe page. And so anyway, she said, "Oh, I'm all for that." She said, "But it's not up to me. I'm not the boss." So I said, "Well, you know, suggest it to the powers that be." What the hell is that? That was a string barrel. Anyway, so it was very satisfying to do it, I've got to say. Okay, so let's just pull this apart. and see what's what. I like doing things from the ground up anyway. So, Alex, what we've got, I'm sweating, we have got a plywood swimming pool body, but actually, apart from that, it's not bad. You know, everything's there. It has an interesting contour to it. It's rounded. There's a few little scrapes here and there which we could touch up with some red paint, rather than, you know, even, it's not worth refinishing or anything like that, but there's a couple of touch-ups we could make. But it's an interesting, unusual body. Here we've got a so-so pickguard, ceramic single coils. The wiring actually looks like it's broken. That's interesting. It is. It's broken on all of them. These are totally non-serviceable. I don't know what they said on the listing. It'd be interesting for you to find out, but I'll show you now. Let's pull one of them off. I think they're all as broken. Are they broken? No, wait a minute. Oh, maybe they're not. Hang on. I guess what I'm going to suggest is there's no reason why this guitar, well, I'll have a closer look at the neck, but I suspect there's no reason why this guitar shouldn't play well at some point. The question is you know, what's the best it can be, and is it worth going ahead with? Now I was going to say that this appears to be, it's interesting. I was looking for the little wires here coming out of the thing, but actually they don't. They come out. It directly comes out from underneath, so it doesn't even use the bobbins in the way that most people do. So anyway, look, we've got what would appear to work. Let's just check if these pickups actually work. Don't know what they'll sound like. Average will be my suspicion, but you know, for 50, 60 quid you can get a perfectly good alternative set. In the 20k range, and we'll go blue, blue, well, okay, which one will blue be? Neck, that'll be out there, won't it? So neck 5.23, middle 5.29, bridge 5.23, so they're all identical, but they're working, so it's quite an interesting thing that they actually don't use the little bobbin things. So let's just leave that for the time being, because the options are we either replace this hardware or we don't. Now the thing is, it's tempting to think about putting larger pots in, full-size pots, but often they don't fit into this sort of space, so you have to be sort of reasonable, practical about that. And actually they probably won't make that much of a difference. Now this will shine up pretty red with a bit of scratch remover and or a buff, although getting the buffer out for this is probably a bit of a overkill, but like I say, it's nothing wrong with that really. Solid, which is rare. So I'm going to take a couple of pictures. Bridge, average, nothing fantastic about it. The spacing is probably standard, he says. No, it could be the narrow gauge. Let's just check. If it's a narrow gauge, we're looking at 52. We are looking at 52. 52. Okay, 52, 10.5, 52.5, 25, 55, 25. But it's 5 gaps, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. 52.5, so that's, did I say it was? 10.5. 10.5 spacing. So that isn't the ultra narrow one of the later or the earlier Encore. So this could be a Chinese thing. Interesting. Okay, let's hang the body safely out of the way for the time being. As I say, I'll take a couple of shots and then I'll have a chat with Alex. The problem with all of these things is, you know, you can spend as much or as little as you like trying to make these things work, and they'll they'll do, but they will only ever be a what do you call it, laminate bodied Chinese or mystery Indian, possibly Encore. Now that isn't the end of the world, and the matter of the basic issue of it is, does it play, can we make it play well? Just looking at this neck now, this is flattened out and just slightly backbowed, so I think it's kind of at the limit of what it can do. Sometimes if you want to, you can take the truss rod, well, all times, you can take the truss rod right off. What you'll get is you'll get the thing eventually come off, and the thing will go into a curve. But if you find the right piece, what you can end up finding, if we get there, I don't know if we can, you can end up sometimes putting an extra washer in here and getting an extra bit of pull. If the thing's sort of run out of gumption. I don't think this runs the opposite way. I don't think it's a two-way one, but it is tightening again, so maybe that'd be very unusual. Okay. Difficulty is seeing whether it's actually trying to come out or not. But anyway, that's an option that I found occasionally brings out or frees up another very small amount of bite. Let's see if this is going to come out. Is it trying to come out? It's coming close. No, I think it's nearly the end of its travels. I think it's getting caught in the wood, so I don't think it wants to come out. Anyway, I think with 9s on it, I think we'll be just at the limits of its performance anyway, so I don't think we need to worry too much. So I'll just do it back up again, make sure it bites. If necessary, I would dig out the wood a little bit and finally, make it come out, and we could dig this hole a little bit so it would bring the end adjuster out. If we really don't get anywhere, we could do that. But I suspect, judging by what I've seen already, that it would just about work. So we've got the original Encore logo. We've got the cheapish tuners, which again we can adjust. Now, just coming back to it, what are the core things about this guitar? It's that it's got to play and stay in tune, number one, right? That's the absolute heart of it. And so for that, we have to have, do we have decent frets? Do we have a neck that adjusts? And do we have a nut that we can set to making sure it stays in tune? And if we can take care of those, so I'm saying the fret's good, the frets are good enough. It's a bit filthy, but it will clean up. We have, we can replace the nut. Not even sure what that is. It's more than likely plastic, but it actually could even be. In fact, you know what? I think it's bone. I think somebody's actually replaced it with a bone one, funnily enough. Anyway, it needs, we'll make sure it's cut right, thick enough. Yeah, there's a little bit of super glue, so I think somebody has put a bone in. These used to be, in my experience, the Indian ones were slightly wider than a standard, and I think this feels sort of almost standard width, so that would be quite telling. Because if it's standard width, it makes me think less Indian, more other country. Yeah, I think that's not the standard. The Indian manufacturing of these Encores tended to be black, certainly with the Sun Mustangs. I think also with the original Encores they were black and slightly deeper this way. So I think this is an early Chinese pre-Wilkinson type of thing. Now it doesn't mean it's terrible. It's clear it's got a laminate thing. So yeah, so just in terms of playability, a neck that responds, yes. I can hear a toad. There's actually a toad outside. Anyway, a neck that responds, frets are all pretty good. Nothing with any major dents are going to be a showstopper. Needs a bit of tidying up, obviously it's filthy. Okay, so we've got a neck that will play. It's quite a flat radius, I reckon it's about 16, something like that, so we won't have any major radius restrictions. Is that 16 or is that 12? Really, maybe it's 14, 14. Can't see in this light. No, it's flatter than that, so it's not 20. Blimey, you know what it is? It is. That's flat. That's 20-inch radius. Wow. I'm looking for those. I heard Morris or someone. Okay, 20-inch radius. That's interesting. Which I don't think that's typical of the Indian ones either. They were more like 16, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, so I think this is early Chinese. Anyhow, so we've got a decent enough neck. It's straight. It's not twisted. Frets are good enough. Actually, I reckon the nut's probably good enough. These will hold tuning, but they're just a bit grungy. But you know, for £20 you can get a perfectly good upgrade. So you know, let's make a list of what this could require. So let's go. Tuners, 20 quid. Obviously, there's the setup and fret leveling, etc. is going to be the 100 quid. Pickups. Well, even if you put something of the, I mean, again, to have fun with this, you don't even need to change those, but let's say you change them and we put Wilco pickups in for 35 quid or whatever it is. And pretty much everything else in there is functional. You know, the capacitors so-so, the mini pots are so-so, just needs rewiring and putting that together again correctly. So, you know, for a low playing, light actioned Strat guitar with a 20-inch radius, we're talking 155 setup. Now, the point is, you know, quite often people go, oh, but for £155 my mate's got a Squire Vintage Modified for sale, and that may be true, but it won't play as low and as light and stay in tune the way this will when I finish with it for the cost. So, but anyway, I'll give Alex the choice on this. The other thing about this is you can either keep the, I mean it's a bit extra I suppose, but you can keep the headstock, or you can change that and turn that into a Telecaster headstock for fun. You might find that it looks nicer than that one, but it's neither here nor there. It's actually got a flat profile. It's got a Telecaster profile, which is quite interesting on the back here, a Telecaster heel shape, which is a little bit unusual. It's also stepped down here. It's not being routed or cut exactly properly, so that might need a little bit of, actually it's sticking out, so that will be affecting the intonation very slightly. So that actually needs, ideally should be flattened off just to make sure it doesn't sit proud. But yeah, so that's an interesting one. So in a way this would be a perfectly viable Telecaster neck for a Telecaster. Have I got a Telecaster body here? I do. One of mine, I don't know if it's cut for this shape. Well, oh no, I've cut this for it's a Telecaster, but I've cut it to reuse a, I've gone the opposite way. I've cut it for a Strat neck, so that's a bit of a pointless comparison. Anyway, but yes, it is a telly profile or a telly heel, so that's interesting. I'll make a note of that. So it's a telly heel, could be a telly headstock. I mean, the thing about that is that if you again don't like it in the future, then you've got a viable Telecaster style neck to go with the body of your choosing. Anyway, that's how I look at it, kind of making the most of what I've got. So, just as is, 150 quid, including setup. And that would, what would you get for that? We'd get decent sounding guitar, plays great, nice to play, easy to play, low action at both ends, stays in tune, beautifully cleaned up and polished out, and reasonable tuners that stay that are not hard to do up. Now, do you need that? No, you could leave the tuners out of it. I think if you're going to invest money in setting it up, I think there's the second thing is the tone. After the playability comes the tone, and I think to stick with these probably more than very average sounding pickups, I think would be probably a mistake. It would negate the spending the money. So playability, tone, looks, brand, you know, in kind of that order, if anything, not the other way around. Anyway, so I thought you might find that vaguely interesting. And of course this, I'm just going to take some pics. This may come to naught if Alex doesn't feel that he wants to spend the money on it. You know, it's a punt. And as I say, I've got another one of these coming from Paul. Not another one of these, but I've got another punt coming, which is a Marlin Strat, and it could be completely screwed. This, judging by this, I think this would play, and it's a nice sort of sexy fire engine red. So, you know, we could have fun with that. Okay, hang that there for now. All right, see you in a bit. Hey, here we are on Alex's Encore Strat. So what we've got is some pretty rusty, I don't know how well you can see that, some fairly rusty neck screws, some very rusty and bent tremolo claw screws, and some very rusty tremolo screws. So really those ideally would want to be replaced, and along with that we've got kind of filthy bridge components. Filthy bridge components. So what we can do with that is we can take something like this. Actually, no, it's not that important. They're not that gunged up. These, luckily, the bridge is really averagely okay. So what it looks like is these are stripped out. They're locked down firmly, so there's no point adjusting or farting around with them. They never need to be adjusted, but they've been stripped out by somebody in the past. So they're kind of locked in place, and that's your lock. Like I say, it's the only time you'd need to undo them is if you were planning on replacing it with a heavier block, which would be a bit of a extravagance on this guitar. But what we've got are all these little saddles, which are pretty grubby, but we can give them a quick. They're not actually bad in and of themselves. They're sort of, in a way, they're a bit better than the bent steel ones that you might find on budget guitars, because they've got a little bit more mass to them, and they've got a little notch at the end, so they're perfectly workable, just a bit grubby with old age. So right at this moment, in the house, the reshaped neck for this guitar is drying. The poly lacquer, I've used wipe-on poly, which is really easy to do indoors because it's obviously low emissions, not much in the way of toxic fumes, but you can sort of do it in between other things and pass by the kitchen table, give it another layer, leave it an hour, come back, do another layer, so you can build up a good coverage nice and slowly, which is what I've done. And then what I do is leave it a day, and then in the house flat it back, ready to buff, which I won't do until maybe Sunday or something, if and when it's a little drier. Anyway, meanwhile, I'm just going to have a look in here. So anyway, I'm looking in here for screws and things, but meanwhile we've got the pickups out of the Encore Strat here. They're actually staggered, which is quite interesting considering the budgetness. Got the original tuners, they're going as well. But these are probably workable, but these are not good. So I do have a pile of, I have a set of neck screws here that we might find a workable replacement set out of. Obviously you want to keep them very close to being the same. It's kind of impossible to see them in there, so I've got to pull them out. Like I say, we might struggle to get a single set of the same sorts of size. Okay, let's put these four up next to each other. to, you can hear the winds picking up. It's getting quite perturbed. Okay, so that's a fairly good replacement, but they're not really that much different, I have to say. The only thing that would be the decider is how are the heads on those. They're fine. So a swap out, these are a little bit thicker. We don't really have an issue. I'll stick with the originals on this. So we'll just call that quits. Actually, what might be smart is, while I'm at it, is just put these together. Since I know there's a set, I'm going to have to go looking a bit further afield in my spares, loose spares boxes to find a set of tremolo, 6 tremolo bolts. Also have to have a good look at the holes. It might be good if they're a little bit bigger, because it's plywood or laminate. Okay, that's my neighbour hammering up the fence at the back. Yeah, because these are going into plywood, they've probably stripped it out a little bit already. So let's see. This is going to be fun. A box of goodness. I've got so much stuff in here at the moment, which is very nice, but it doesn't make this sort of thing easy. Searching for bits. What is this? Is this a good Oak Grigsby start? It is, isn't it? That could be what I need. I don't need it right now. Keep your head straight. I need that out for later. That's a telly bridge. That's some nice CPS pots. That's a bit of micro mesh. Some capacitors. I know what everything is. Why am I looking at everything? More capacitors. More switches. Ooh, look at how many Oak Grigsby's have I got to my name. Now, come on, Sam, what we're looking for is, you want, those are for the cover caster. Right. So the bottom line is, the tremolo screws aren't in there. So it means I'm going to have to dig in here. Okay, there's 3 tremolo screws. That's what I was looking for. There's a bunch of, oh, look at those M3s. So much good stuff. Magic eye connectors. We've got replacement these, but we don't need those. We've got tons of those kicking around. I'm just looking out for tremolo screws. I might need one of those for that. I'm thinking several different things. I might need one of those for that. Thinking ahead on a different guitar. Got one on those. Not quite. Not quite. No. Rub screws. Jack plates. Tiny little flat screws. No. Okay. Now we're looking at the loose stuff. Snapped off screws. No. Stop bar. Okay, a little bit disappointing. What I also need is I need 2 claw screws, even more importantly, and that's a wood screw. It would do, wood screw would do. Now these are these would do the job. They are good. I don't know where I keep the other ones. I might have to have a look in the box of OCD. There's another one. Right, that's everything in there. It's going to do us any good. More things to look at. There's a pile of things here which are kicking around loose, of which some of them are exactly those black screws. Let's grab those and see. This might be a better option. Sorry, I'm muttering. Black, gold. Claw screws. Still need those tremolo claw screws, which I haven't got. Not in there. Okay. So we have got a bunch of, these are slot screws, but actually they're going to be much better than these rusted out. They're obviously a different colour, but I think I'm prepared to overlook that. So look, we've got 6 of those. These rusty things are going to go in the bin because they're horrible. Those are just not needed for now. We've got 6 of those. Okay, they're slots, but that's the only downside. We've got 3 of them which would do the job, which are, let's keep them out just in case. 3 of them are hexy things. 6 are slots. If I can find 3 more hexes, I will use those. And which means we'll finally turn to the box of bits. We go black mid-length screws. Ooh, I think these are coming under the banner of slots. Okay, so it's not those. Long pickup screws. What I need at the moment is I need the... Okay, I'm going to have to grab something else. Strap for black Strat saddle screws. Saddle screws. No. Acoustic pins. Gold pickguard. No. Pickup screws. Small pickguard. No. Middle hand. No. No. Black pickup ring screws. No. Chrome. Black pickguard screws. Long stem steel. Clean pickguard. No. Now, the other thing is we've run out of. These are all rusty, the pickguard screws, so we need to get some more of those. Pickguard screws, clean old pickguard screws. I think all of these are going to be better than the rusty rubbish we've got there. Okay, so that's not yet found. Miscellaneous screws, anyone? Not blanks, okay. Use pot switches, pots. No. Okay. So, I think we're going to go with the slots, and then the tremolo screw, I'm going to pull out a couple of these unpartnered long things. Find a matching pair somewhere. Maybe. What do they do? What do they look like by comparison? Where's the rusted old things gone? Have I chopped them already? I think I might have. Huh? Will these do? Yeah, these will do. So there's our replacement tremolo screws. The tremolo screws. I must have taken them out. Yeah, I have taken them out. But this will do, won't it? Yep, that's fine. Okay. That's that sorted. These, although they'll be easier to use, they're going back for another day, and we will go with slots because they're exactly the right size. So, meanwhile, we take out all of this gunge that doesn't work, keep the stuff that does, keep. Keep these jobbies. We probably need some bigger screws, but we'll keep those just in case. Put those there. Need all these. These go with the pickups, and then chuck all these other little rusty pickguard screws away. Okay, those go with the strap buttons, those go with the pickups. These go in the bin. In the metal bin. There you go. Okay, so all that junk in there. We might want a couple of screws. No, yes, a couple of strap button screws later on, but that's fine for now. Okay, this is the working pile. We're going to need a bunch of old but clean pickguard screws of the similar size. These are sort of spares from somewhere else, but they're still workable, and they're certainly better than the rusty ones that we've already thrown away. So these are all just leftovers from things where I've put brand new ones on. If it's screwed at all, no pun intended. If their heads are knackered or anything, then they go in the bin because they're no good. Blah blah blah. Or if they're too rusty. Okay, let's chuck a pile of those in there and use those when the time comes. We can always come back to these and get some more. There's new ones as well, but it's not a new guitar, so I'm not gonna put brand new ones on there. I don't mind doing this out of leftover things. Okay, now while I'm at it, let's put this back together again, ready for use. As I say, nothing essentially wrong with this. It's not fantastic quality, but it's not bad. It'll do perfectly well. Get on there. That's the trouble when you have these legs already stuck out, the grub screws, then the saddle sits misaligned to the adjuster screw. It can be a bit of a pain to get this started without stripping the screw, so you have to stand it up. I tend to always keep the same order of these things, just because it's simpler. If there's any quirk to it, then at least it's going back on the original, in the original hole it came from. Sometimes it makes a difference, sometimes it doesn't make any difference. Okay. Alright, so next steps, as I say, tomorrow I will sand flat the poly lacquer on the headstock, which is covering up the nice new Morris logo. And this is quite an interesting guitar because it's one of the most humble guitars to get the Morris Aristocat logo, but because it's getting sort of good treatment, I think it deserves that label. You know, it's being upgraded from its humble beginnings, and you know, the idea is to get it play really well. Now I'm going to put these off to one side. I really don't suggest they'll be good for anything, but I will check with Alex. If he wants them, I will send them back. But right now, they would go in the bin, in the metal bin, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm just shoving them in one pile, safely out of harm's way. Stay there. There you go. Right. Okay. So on this guitar, then we've got a pickguard waiting, cleaned up, tidied up, waiting to go back on. We've got slightly cleaned up hardware and improved, waiting to go on. We'll shove all that down there, and we're just waiting for pickups and yeah, pickups and the tuners. Yeah, and get the headstock finished, which won't take long, so a couple of days and then we'll be able to put all the equipment on and do the final part of the setup. Well, actually I was thinking of, as soon as the headstock is dry, then I can put the tuners on and do that part of the setup, just to really mitigate any possible losses, so that, you know, if it really doesn't perform, then they kind of, we don't want to go fitting all the equipment to it. We can keep it for another day. You know, but I think we're kind of committed to it. The judgment has to be, you know, you look at the neck and you say, basically, does this look and feel like it's going to do a reasonable job? And in this case, my judgment was yes, it will. And if I get that wrong, then kind of it's down to my judgment, really, or my poor judgment. A couple of times I've bought old Encores, particularly the transitional ones that I can't tell whether they're Indian or Chinese, but a couple of them I've bought. I think there's one called the Coaster or something. It turns out to be an absolutely crap guitar in every respect. but this isn't quite as bad as that. I mean, it's not as bad as that, so we shall see. Anyway, off for now. See you in a bit. Hey, hello. Oh, different view. I'm coming at you from a different camera too, because I left the other one in the house. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of check in with you about where we are. So look, I have this here, which is the new Warman pickups. Just check through everything, make sure everything's wired up and solid and secure and sound and all that. So the idea is that this is all going to live. Now what's going to go where? That's black and white are the jack plug, and then the blue is the claw earth, or the bridge earth. So I'm just going to put these through here. Can't see much. The sound you can hear possibly is my dehumidifier running, because I'm making or attempting, oh God, why is this so impossible to handle, and I'm attempting to lower the humidity in here so I can spray some nitro a bit later on. It's not an ideal place, but I don't really have any choice anymore because the weather's turned. God, why is this so impossible to get through? Just one of these will go through, not both. How amazing. And it's not even, as if it's short on wires. Yeah, so I'm lowering the humidity. Holy cow, this is doing my head in. Right. Lowering the humidity so that a bit later on I can do some spraying and get this headstock finished, so I can then progress this MG custom commission. Okay, so this is all neatly fitted up. Everything there. So a little bit of leftover stuff that I've got to take off. The stuff is known as conductive paint. A bit of water. I shall use that. Yeah, so anyway, that's what I'm going to do. See if that's got me clear of that mark. Yeah. Yes, so I'm going to spray some nitro, get that taken care of, and then we can just get finished. Well, move that commission on, because it's taking a bit too long, thanks to the crappy weather, I'm afraid. Okay, so this is just sitting a little bit up. So it's a bit of a stupid arrangement. I have to duck it down and under. That's all good. Push that inwards a bit, please. And then we've got this. Push it under there, and then make sure it's out of the way there. Okay, what am I feeling that's there? Can't see anything. That's possibly that sitting on there. I'm not quite sure what that is there. I mean, that's the edge of this thing. Alright, it's pressing on those. Let's get those out of the way. Now I've got to push these through again. But I had to do that. I've got to do that. So with this one, it's really a matter of reconnecting this, getting back together again, and then basically fret leveling this and doing the setup part of things. That's better. So, familiar grounds. This dehumidifier, funnily enough, is chucking out a fair bit of heat while it's doing its job. So originally I had planned to put on the heat as well to aid the dehumidification process, but it's evident that I don't need to do that. It's doing quite a good job all on its own. I did it earlier on for about maybe an hour most, and it took the humidity down from 90% down to 75, which is just about, at that point, was just about sprayable. In the end, and that was a very short time too, so there we go. Now where do all the bits live? There they are. So always got to remember where you put guitars these days. Right, so it's our new screws. Well, they're new, they're replacements, but they're not brand new. Wow, nice. I'm really interested to hear these pickups. I've heard a lot about them, a lot of good reviews and so on, but I've never had the pleasure of trying them out until now, which is quite good. A bonus for me, because then if they're good, then I can use them again. So this, you know, by rights, this shouldn't be a very good guitar, because it's you know, it's a very old laminate Encore, which won't be and it's not highly thought of by anybody, but actually it's looking quite good, especially with its odd Telecaster headstock as well, with new tuners on there. I'll show you in a second. Now the judgment is the frets here are good enough, we'll find out soon, good enough to play, to you know, level out and play really well, so that's the plan. Okay, so we've got, for now, we've got all of those bits on. Tone. I'm not going to the trouble of soaping these and washing them out. They're kind of a bit of old street mojo. This whole thing isn't new or pretty. I might find a white, actually probably find a bright white one to go in there. Okay, so what we got to do now is hook up the these are already tinned, that's good. So we're going to hook up this. Now again, this is a little bit grubby. We can probably give it a little bit of a clean, but really not much all told. And we don't want to go to too much trouble to sort of shine it up, otherwise it will just end up looking brand new, which will just look odd. Now this is a crappy construction. We're going to need to find, that's right, it came without the right pieces, so we're going to need to find some additional bits to make this work. Got a few things kicking around here. I need a washer, correct size, which probably isn't that. We need another nut, which we've got here. And then we do need an appropriate washer, which we haven't got yet. Somewhere in here should be one. Heck, I'm going to have to tip it out. So 75% humidity right now. That'll do me. Get out of here. Right. I'll start getting warm in a minute. Okay, so the fun part of this is we've got to get through here, and then we're going to attach this and tighten it up, and it's always a difficult one with these Stratocaster plates. We've also got to get rid of the old wires on here and clean out the holes, clean out the lugs, so we can attach new clean end of the wire to it. It's the same wire, but I've just cut it back and cleaned it up. Give it another go at it. There we go. And hole and hole. So get this, and we put that through there like that. Is that there? Please make it big enough. No, it's too small. Oh, is it? Yeah, it is, isn't it? Damnation. Let me find a larger washer from somewhere. I think we'll find one the correct size in here. It's a nice looking guitar so far. It's got some, obviously it picked up some water damage there, but I think it's okay. Got a good feeling about how it's going to play. Okay, we've got a large-ish one here. It'll fit over there, but the question is will it fit in there? Yes. It's a bit, kind of looks a bit outsized really for this purpose of this thing, but now this is the hard bit. How do you get this done up tight? Well, you can turn it a bit like this. Alright, it's not a brilliant washer, but actually this will do better. Sorry, rewind. Okay. Do that. 74, and we're falling. So it's only been half an hour, so that's quite good. We should be in a position to do our spraying. Now this jack plugs are funny things, okay, they always wear out. So if you do them downwards, what is my experience? Now if you do them that way, then that pushes up and then hits the back, so they actually have to be downwards. I never could quite work it out, and I've tried it lots of different ways. But I think to leave the tip room to expand, it has to be down. And this is the bit that just seems completely primitive. Is making sure that stays on. And you've only really got your bare hands to do it with. So this unit here is probably going to be filling up with water, because it does not pull out some water from the atmosphere. Okay, so we're going to go with black. That's the earth. That's my. I'm pretty certain that's the way it was wired. I'd be kicking myself if it wasn't, but we shall see. We'll find out pretty quickly if that's the case. Come on. What's wrong with transferring heat when I need you to? That's weird. 350 degrees it do say. Fiddly. Look at this, I don't have enough hands. I don't have small enough hands, and it's getting 1,000,000,000 degrees of heat in here. Steamy. Which is funny because actually it is warm, but it's not. It can't be moist because it's taking the moisture away. Okay. Just give me a halfway grip, would you? Thank you. That's not the best, most exotic of views, I know. Oh, that's funny, that one really looks like it's gone on, but this one, that's better. I don't think we want to go through. Okay. We'll need a couple more screws for the plate on the back later. Okay, check that through, that's good. Okay. I like it. Now I'll do a quick test, as quick as it can be. Oh, genius. Now this is a smaller one, so let's leave that out of the mix. It's just confusing things. Lovely, lovely, lovely. All good. Right, now for a test. So all we need off this really is the back plate a bit later on. Stick that down there for now. So before, I'm going to warm. So we want to do a test, which requires this and this. Cheers. Be careful. Volumes and tones is okay. We've unplugged it. Okay, so we don't need. Oh, we do need this again. Hold on a second. One more thing to do. Let's get that bit on there, and then once I've done that, we'll unplug this and plug the amplifier back in. This is a little bit tricky. It's quite difficult to get solder to hold on here because this acts as a huge great heat sink, so it doesn't really want to attach, and I've now hooked it to the damned spring, which is again not what I want to do because that's going to be snapping it off if it's not careful. Oh boy. Mess, disaster. Yeah, that's why the thing fell off the first time, I think. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull this off here. I don't like that. Just a second. Come on. So there goes the chunk of solder. Let's do what I think is intended here, which is to stick this into a little hole over on this side. I think that's the idea. Whether or not that will actually also grab the solder, I don't know, but let's try pushing it up through here. There it is. Great big chunk of solder. Come on. Oh, Lordy. I mean, this is so prehistoric, isn't it? Please go back under there. No, I won't. Crimey. Right. Let's see if we can persuade it to go in this hole. Well, whether that will stay there is anybody's guess, really. It's as good as I can make it, given the constraints of the tremolo claw. It's actually a useless device. That would be better off having a piece of wire tied onto it than attempting to solder it. Okay, so we've done with the soldering iron. Come out of there. Now we need to replace our amplifier. Jeez. Okay, okay. Let's do our things up. Very loud or something. There's a kind of very faint. No, there isn't. That's supposed to be those two. Yeah, a little bit of buzz in the centre position, but that's normal. Would you credit it? I don't know why I do this. Right. Okay. Let's dump this out of the way. I'm going to bin that jack socket and replace it with another one. I should have known that already. The fact that it's already fallen off and clearly been a problem in the past. So let's find a replacement. I'll tell you what, that's that one. Let's wonder if we can find this kind of thing. We can use a better one actually. Let's use a new trick. Only a hand or two more, but let's make sure it works. Damn. I should have known. Anyway, everything works. 22 minutes dawn. Now we're going to pull these off again. 350. We're up to speed. Thank you. Funny how easy it is for these things to get broken. So it's always worth, if you can, replacing one. So here we have a nice chunky quality one, which I may or may not have the right. I think we should be alright. We'll just go straight in. Do we need another size? Would this fit it? Come on. I think not. I think that's too small. Okay, let's just go straight in and have a bit sticking out, because I don't have two nuts to do this. Oh, we're on 74, so we're kind of stuck on 74, which is about the most that this thing can seem to do. I bet you that will be full up as well shortly. And emptying out. Okay. And then again, a bit later on, I could add some heat, add some more heat to it, which may not hurt the whole affair. Alright, let's get this done up. Now, here's a little thought, right? This is a jack, and of all things that's going to come undone, as you've seen in the past from the previous one, the jack is going to come undone. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a tiny little bit of the old jack lock, thread lock onto here. Okay. And do this up with that on. Now that is just going to help keep it still, and there's no real harm in that. Of all the things, pots are a little bit different. They do come undone, but if you thread lock those, you'll be in a world of misery trying to get them off later on to upgrade them, and obviously people do want to do things like upgrades, but with the jack, really a little bit of thread lock on here to keep this thing in place. You may still find it difficult to undo it later on if you had to, but with a quality piece like that, you shouldn't be in any position to need to, and it's better that this doesn't come undone than for you to have it falling. You know, it's better to have to replace it altogether at the end than having it fall apart when you're playing. It is the one area that's under so much load that it comes apart very easily. And it's one of the things that's always broken on an old guitar, that when you inherit it or buy it second hand, you can almost guarantee a young lad's guitar will be, the jack socket will be either fallen back into the whole thing or just have given up the ghost altogether and died somehow or other. Now it would be great if I could just get this to stay where I wanted it, but it's not usually that easy. Look at it, it just wobbles all over the place. I'm going to treat myself to one of those 30 odd pound gorilla pod type arms, or whatever those things are called, for holding stuff. It's got to be better than the one I use at the moment. That really does drive me crazy. Where did I just put those? Here. No, not there. Here. Okay. Alright. It's all lined up nicely. Like I said, let's line it up nicely. Is that sticking out a bit? I have a feeling that is sticking out too far. Oh God, I haven't got wide enough things, plier things. Unless I've got these will do. Yeah, they'll do. Thank you. That's better. All right. Finally. Okay, I don't need to test that because I know it works. I've just tested it. So, right. Now the fun part, while I'm at it, and while we're 74, I think that's our lowest limit on this dehumidifier. Maybe I could switch a button and make it go even more or something. We're at 16 degrees. That's going in the bin, by the way. And I'll keep the nut because that's always handy. All right, I think that's looking good. So what have we got here? We've got J90, right. Okay, so this is a long thing. This is a Harley Benton set of strings. The question is can I get them on, can I get the ends of them through the tremolo block? I've done a bit of straightening, so I should be able to actually. Let's see, we'll find out pretty quickly if I can or can't. Yeah, so troublesome. So the idea now, having done changed the tuners, changed the pickups, checked the wiring, done a bit of extra bit of that thing is called conducting shielding. Oh, here are the nice new tuners, by the way. Oh, along with that beautiful headstock, by the way. I mean, sorry, it's even beautifuler than the tuners. I'm proud of that. Here we go. Split post. Some of the, I think they're the simplest operation you can get, actually. And I found them, as long as they're decent quality to begin with, something like these Wilkinsons, they'll serve you really well. Simple and effective. And they also, yeah, I had some on my Japanese Squire that you know, lasted for 40 odd years without any problem at all. Okay, so just a quick look. We've got a very high action here, so that's something we need to address. Let's take it down just quickly before we put any more strings on, because that could be a false economy. Let's not do anything. Let's try this. Wrong size. Let us reduce this action, and let's see whether or not we need to shim this. Now this is the wrong size again, isn't it? I'm confused. It is. What is going on here? Right. Hold on. Where's the little silvery one? Can I have this one, please? $73. We are still going down. Right. I don't know why the others didn't work. So the idea is just to, let's get this down, get the action right down, and see how far off we are from a good playing action. And I'm going to put a bit of load on it now. Okay, I think we might get away without a shim on this. So what we'll do, just to simulate it at its normal. Gee whiz, don't like these. Let's take it down a little bit more. So we want 1.5 at the last fret, and we're just over there. So we still have a bit of play in here, so we can go down a little bit more. Although these are looking a bit tired, these grub screws. I think they've kind of worn off there. I might need to take these out. Okay, but that will go down to the right action. Is a little bit flat on there, but I don't mind. Okay, so now we've got another problem. Before we go any further, I've got to get rid of these, all of these if I can, and replace them. A little thing I didn't, too small. What is this weird sizing thing that's going on here? I've lost it. My brain's gone. It's an in-between size. How strange can you get? Okay, so I think I need to, I've got tons of these kicking around. I think we need to replace these. And probably would have been good to have these all off the guitar, but now the problem I've got now with this one is it's definitely not wanting to come off. Okay, so here's a little time-consuming backwards step, I'm afraid. Let's get this out for the time being. Get this off. A bit of a pain. Stay where you are put. Right, this is all a little bit stiff. Thank you. I'll check all the other ones individually, but if we need to replace them all to make sure. So this is, worst comes to the worst, I'm going to use my little gripper pliers, which have disappeared. Serious? No, there they are. Got these little things, I don't know how good they are, but they're really made for this sort of thing, so you can, it isn't this at all, but anyway, these will do. So I'm just grabbing hold of this and taking it off. You can do that, but actually what seems to have happened is the hex part has died a death. So let's just check all the others first. So take them all down just to make sure we can. And let's just leave down 73 now. See, these are all a little bit stiff. Grollocks. Didn't really want to have to do this, but okay. Let's take them all out and make sure this works. This is to do otherwise is going to be a false economy. I'm just going to find myself struggling at a later date. So I think we need to either ensure that these are all actually working comfortably, or we just change them all out. So they're working, but they're a little bit stiff. So what I would need to do now is just replace some of them, and the ones that I don't replace I'm going to grease, but it's just a mighty fiddle from here on. And like this one is going to struggle a bit because it seems to be in sideways. Well, it's doing it, but they haven't been undone for a long time. Here we're going down 72 and falling, so we're kind of in the zone of being able to do some spraying before too late. Right, so I am going to take all of these off, and like I say, just make sure even this bit's stiff. Yeah, it's a for me it's a false economy. If I have to fight this to intonate it, or to even set it up, then it's just wasting my time. So taking care of this once and for all is just sensible. It would be easier if this thing would just go in and stay in, but it's not even the right size. So this is a funny, well, you know why, it's a Korean thing, isn't it? Now this doesn't want to come out at all, so these just aren't behaving. That one doesn't. So I'm going to pull these out and ditch these, find some more. This is absolute pain in the fiddle. So interestingly, I've ordered a bunch of these grub screws, but for a different purpose. I'm going to build my own adjustable bone nuts using the grub screw principle, but I'm amazed how small they go. I've ordered some that go down to, I think it's 1.6 millimeters, or M1.6, which is about a 1.5 millimeter width or something. I can't believe it can be that small. Now, this is kind of the order of these things. It's almost irrelevant now, since I'm removing all these components. Like I said, where they come out, there's no point finding extra things. If they come out okay, we'll just put them in with some grease to make things smoother, keep things in order. Just little tiny details that, of course, they would never do that in a factory, because you know, this one's now stripping already. God, that's funny, isn't it? Doesn't help, you know, you do need to have new or very good quality hex keys as well. So sometimes you can find that there's a tiny bit of wear and it's almost invisible to the naked eye, in which case you can find yourself quickly stripping all the little hex attachments anyway. So, you know, whether it is or isn't, there are tons of these things knocking around in here somewhere. Try another one. I've got a box somewhere with tons of grub screws and Strat style bridge parts, and I can't remember where it is now. I've got to go and find it next. Thank you. What would be great, since we're lowering these right down, it would be fab if I had a whole set of short ones as well. And some people like to basically grind them down to make them shorter. That's right, these were stripped, weren't they, so they weren't really going to go anywhere. Yeah, some people grind them down and make them shorter. I've not really tried that, because my worry is how you actually hold them in place without, you know, wrecking the thread on them, which seems to be a bit counterproductive. You know, you might get them shorter, but then they won't go in, or they'll go in and strip the thread because they've got a little burr on the, you've crushed the threads down the side, so it's a tricky one. Okay, so I'm going to throw these away because I'm going to throw this Allen key away as well. Let me just try something. That's going in the bin. Let me just audit these and see if they respond to this one. Maybe. Okay, that might still be in with a good chance. So here's what I do. Get them one by one. I'd much rather be able to use one of those, prefer to use one of those screwdriver attachments to do this, because it's so much it's so much faster to spin them around like that. But unfortunately it doesn't really work. Now that one looks like it's being sort of gunged up, and so there's not much room for the Allen key, the hex key, to actually grip at this end. But you know, it's doing it. So I can feel it. It's a little bit sticky. It's not totally the happiest thing in the world, but with some grease on it. I've gone through once and back out again. I'm sure it'll be okay. So I'm just doing the same boring thing with each of those. God, dropping them off the end of this thing. What a pain in the... It doesn't matter if I put too much grease on, because I can always wipe it off. See, now this is doing it already. I'm going to have to find some more. Right, maybe it's not a good look. See, that's that. Once you get them on, if you don't strip them, then they're okay. But I'm not happy with that. So goes looking for a set of those. Okay. Here's something from. Here's one I didn't make earlier. These have got more vintagey style. Ooh, nice sort of set. But actually, ooh, these are quite cool. I don't know where they came from. But what I can tell you about them, which is a fortuitous thing, is they are actually little short ones. Now, the question is, will they work with this just for the time being? Yeah, they will. Okay, let's trust this for a minute. Ooh. If we go short, then we're going to have a much better arrangement, and they fit brilliant. Well, this is a better deal. I mean, these are quite cool looking. I don't know, what should we just use these as they are? No, we'll just use the grub screws. They are quite cool, but people prefer a weightier solid block. Now this is a nice little set of short screws. Again, that would cost a few quid to buy. But, you know, to be fair, they are spares here. They're not going anywhere. I wasn't using them for anything, so I will. They will not really cost much. Okay, nice and low. Right. Okay, let's do it. So that one's stripped of its screws. Oh, this one is stripped all together. It's just falling in and out. Oh dear. Let's see if it actually works at all on ours. Wonder why that was. No. No, I think something bad's happened to this one. And it was a young. Oh no, that's okay. Well, I thought it'd been traumatized as a young grub screw. Yeah, well, this is an ideal turn up for the books then, because we won't have a nice low action, but we won't have any bits sticking up into our palms when we're palm muting. So it's just how you'd want it, really. So it all worked out for the best. 72. Oh, we're nearly in the zone, and this isn't going in. Come on. Thank you. Maybe I'll just do them all in one go. Put them all in a pile here. $71. Oh, we're in the zone. I have to get my mask out in a minute. It depends how much water's built up. It'll probably run out of room and start bleeping an alarm at me. But it's a pretty good outcome. I know it's going to cost a bit in electricity, but I can live with that. Get this done. Otherwise, Mike's guitar's in the sort of well, held up in the queue, which isn't great for him or me. Okay, right. So. Yeah, so I bought myself not only some tiny grub screws, but also a nice tap and die set, micro one, and I'm determined to get making some adjustable nuts. You know, when you look at the technology involved, it's not rocket science, and Tusk is charging £14 or something like that per adjustable nut. Now Tusk is a good material, and you know, it's sort of a self-lubricating thing, so you know, to me they're worth paying £13 for. But and the reason I'm sort of moved to make one of my own is actually I don't mind paying £13, you know, to have that kind of quality adjustability on each of my custom guitars. But the reason I'm going to make my own is because Tusk don't make a Stratocaster one, so I really have no choice, and I would really like to have an adjustable nut following the same thing. But of course, whereas on a Les Paul you can sort of work with the space you've got, which is quite a wide nut, I suppose you'd call it, thick, wide, or whatever, whereas you know, 7 or 8 millimeters deep, I suppose, whereas the Stratocaster or the Telly is only about 3 to 3.5 mils. Can be a little wider if you want to cut it wider, and on things like these Encores and the Sun Mustangs, they were characterized by having a wider nut than normal. Not on this one perhaps, but certainly on the Indian made ones. Anyway, so the point is, I'm going to basically see if I can do an adjustable nut using a tiny grub screw, even smaller than these. So there's no reason why I shouldn't, but it's going to be interesting to see. 71%. I think once upon a time, if I'd ever thought about doing something as fiddly as this, I wouldn't have believed it. I've never seen myself as patient enough to do this. And in some ways, particularly around soldering, I think I really had to overcome some self-beliefs about that to stick with it and actually learn to enjoy it, because there's no point doing it if you don't enjoy it. So it took me quite some time. I used to get very frustrated and curse myself and, you know, big, I guess it's the same with a lot of blokes, you know, big sausage fingers. Why can't I why can't I hold this like that? Dropping things and then they disappear down the back of the workbench and so on. There's a lot of frustration involved, like that, getting grub screws stuck in the grease. You just have to kind of overcome the desire to call yourself a ham-fisted Egypt. Come on, get in there properly. This one wants to go the wrong way. Come on. Right. So, everything replaced with nice low, conveniently nice low grub screws, meaning nice smooth action. Okay, now this obviously is a little bit now greasy. It's going to be that way. Just have to be careful not to get it everywhere. So now what I've got is a bunch of grub screws I think I'll just throw away. Okay, so that's that done. Get rid of the grease. Now right now I don't mind having grease on my hands for this next bit with the strings and test stringing, but ideally I wouldn't want my hands covered in this if I was setting up a guitar for the final time. So important to straighten out the strings again, for which the screwdriver I need is not present for some reason. Screwdriver, not even the right word. Pliers. Anyway. Okay. Ah, hellfire! I didn't even realise you were right next to the phone. Sorry for all the noise in advance. See, I'm not in the familiar mode now. I'm different camera. I'm all over the shop. Right. So these are, as I said, these are sacrificial strings for the purpose of the setup. Now I'm going to cut this off a bit because we had a bend here that isn't going to be helpful. So I'm going to just snip it. If I can find my pliers again, my cutters. But I'm doing that because it's been bent around this post a few times and I don't want it snapping on me as I do it up now, which it's likely to do. So this guitar has had a string tree on it, so we might need to put another one back in. I'll try and find a better quality one than the ones it had. I can't remember even what it was now. They're usually awful. So again, Tusk is a very good string tree type. It makes a lot of sense. You don't want any metal, as little metal as possible, grabbing hold of the strings, interfering with the free movement. We're 71 and 17, so the temperature is going up slowly while the humidity is falling. Sort of where it's supposed to go, anyway, it's not bad. Okay, so the fact that I'm going to use 10s to set this up, and I haven't asked Alex what gauge of strings he wants on here, but it doesn't matter for the time being for doing the setup. That can be on any gauge we want, really. All that will happen is if we set up, do the fret leveling based on 10s and then we switch to 9s, it just means there may be a small adjustment of the truss rod required. Now remember, this also has a truss rod. Oh, conveniently it's at the headstock end, That's good news. I was thinking for a moment it was at the other end. I can't remember what guitar I was thinking of, but I'm very pleased to announce it's at the sensible end. And when they're down here, they're just a right pain because you have to guess. You have to take the neck off, which means of course either taking strings off or at least slacking them off, slacking them and capoing them so they don't run away, and then you have to undo the neck and make an adjustment blind effectively, and then do the neck back up, put it all under tension again, and then hope. Okay, now the final two strings of the B. Thankfully I straightened these out sometime in the past, which is very thoughtful of me. I'm perfectly prepared for a day like today. The only trouble is, even when it's straightened out, there's absolutely no guarantee that the string wants to behave and go through. Okay. So we're nearly there on this stage of things. I think you'd agree that the custom Telecaster headstock does look classier than the gloopy Korean stroke Indian Chinese Encore one. That's not actually, it's not because of a brand or anything, you know, it's just a familiar shape, isn't it? You know, we've all got used to the look of the Telecaster and Stratcaster headstocks. I don't care about the logo. Of course I only care about my own, but I've never been somebody I've never been even vaguely tempted to try and put a fender on a guitar that wasn't one. Now, do I have enough to go through here? See, I'm struggling to get this through because it's bent here and it really doesn't want to straighten out far enough to comply with what the hell we're doing. Unless you can get it straight enough, it tends just not to behave. So it can be a false economy, but the problem is I haven't got any spares now. I've been so long using the 3-pack sets of strings where you don't get the extra string that I've got none of my familiar spare top E's, which were always very helpful for just this situation where you say, I can't be bothered to try and get this through the hole. I can't even see through here. Why is that? Well, it could be because that's in the way anyway, but any sign of... no, still can't see all the way through. I hope there isn't something in here that's stopping it. That's... the ball of a previous string. It's always a pain in the butt. You never get the string through if there's something in there. And that's when these ultra fine hex keys really come in handy, because you can poke one through the bridge. And we're up to 17 degrees and we're still on 71. Kind of, I think we're diminishing returns now on the humidity side of things. Hey. Now we're going to do this up to tension, and we'll do a couple of things. We'll set a basic low action to begin with, and sort of just have a feel for things. These are all set right down at the moment, so I expect they'll be bottomed out maybe on the neck. Okay, we are bottomed out, so I do need to raise these to get any sense out of this, which is no big deal. Okay, up you go. Right, that's trying to. Come on, in you go. Now let's just get all of these a bit up, so at least we'll get a note out of them before we go into setting precise action. See how fiddly and time consuming all this is? And an hour we've been going at this. And we're just about getting to a place where we can work with this bridge. Right, so roughly tightened up. Now I'm going to put the capo back on for a second. Hey, 17 and 70. Okay, now we're interested in getting the action right at this end, and we're going to go up on here. So we're going to go 1.5 at this lower E, which is our standard target action for something like a Stratocaster. In fact, we'll go a tiny bit lower because it's going to raise again when we take that capo off. But then I'm going to go a bit above it, obviously, with the second one to follow the radius around, which should be a nice flat radius anyway. Yeah, that's good. A bit up. Check this. We're high there, so it's much flatter. Okay. Okay. I want to take care as well. Sorry about this. Pull this back. Away from the screws for a start. the extremely ornery bridge. Okay. Holy crap, come on. Right. Let's just continue with the height setting. And roughly the right height, right tension, and we've got too high there. Bring this down again. Okay, that one to there. A bit up there. A little bit up there, tiny bit up there, and down there. So we really want to go about 1.5 all the way down to 1.2, which is very subtle, small changes. So it's quite a gradient, I suppose you would say. Right. Okay, so I've yet to do the first fret action, but just checking it out now for low player. That's where you get the first sign. First sign of how well it plays, and that's pretty good. Okay, so we're now going to take care of, or next stop, and then take a break in a minute. Next stop, we're going to take care of the nut slots and thereby the first fret height. Once we've done that, then we're in position to do the fret leveling. Conscious of the angles here are obviously too high, or not very low. So we'll find a string tree for that. See you in a minute. Here we go, plug in. This thing's misbehaving, so there we go. Put that out of the way, sort of, kind of. Look what we have here. Is we have Alex's Strat with its polished, refinished neck thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the neck now and hang this out of the way separately. Now what I might just do, some people like to use wax, but I think I'm going to use a little bit of grease on these things just to give them a chance of getting on and staying rust free if I can help it. Give it a chance anyway. Slurp. Okay. Up we go. 1. 2. 3. And 4. Grease blurp at the end there. Okay, now that's our refitted neck. I've also got some bits of conductive paint as well. So basically I just hang this out of the way for the time being. We could do various things at this stage. We could put the bridge back in and have that ready. Let's do that while we've got the camera running. might as well. Tremolo. Slightly extraordinary black tremolo screws. Okay, now the question here is, do these fit nicely? Now these are slots, remember, we don't have any choice about that. We are condemned to using the slot screws. Let's check this fits. Yep. Okay, I'm just really going to get a feel for how well these go in. Hopefully they'll feel snug. So they can sit in. I want them to feel snug. It doesn't need massive amounts of grip, but we've just got to get a sense of how worn out this this ply or laminate is, because it's a bit of a weak material when it comes to screwing in things. It doesn't withstand it very much, so wouldn't be completely surprised if we had to redo that, but I'd rather not, because it's just more time. So it's getting a sort of dull. This stuff is great as a conductive thing, but it never properly dries, so you're always up against getting it on yourself and then getting it everywhere, and you can't get it off, so you have to say to yourself, do not touch the damn stuff. Anyway, that feels fairly snug actually. They may be a tiny bit wider than the original, so which is probably a good thing. So I've just done basically a couple of little things today. This weekend is mainly about getting Nick's Coacaster finished, which I'm going to do in a minute. It's nearly there. But while I was at it, I thought I'd have a go at indoor buffing, which I haven't done in this shed before. But the buffer's now over there. I put on a mask and give it a go, and it spreads a bit of dust around and stuff, but it's actually not too impossible to do with. You know, it actually doesn't take long at all to buff out a neck like those there. So anyway, that's what I did, and now this guitar is ready for the new equipment to arrive next week, and the Oakcaster, most of the equipment's here, so I'll get onto that once Nick's done. So that'll be kind of next in the line. That's Dave's Oakcaster number 21. So basically, this is an improvement, because we've got rid of the rusted screws, which really were in a bad way, and replaced them with some new black ones, which of course look a little bit out of place, but it's much better. I think I've just failed to record that whole section. Now, just for your information, what I did was I just put on the neck, which you can now see is a Telecaster shaped neck, nice and shiny, nice lacquer or poly at that end. It's a Telecaster shape at this end, despite this little bit here. The actual heel is cut for a telly. So the way I thought about this is, you know, even if this guitar never works out, then Alex has still got a nice usable spare Telecaster neck with some decent tuners that we're going to have on it. Put the bridge back on with the black screws. These are new screws, so they're obviously going to be a lot stronger. So they seem to fit pretty well, which is good. Okay, let's just see why that's sitting forward there. That's okay. Yeah, bridge will be locked down when we come to restring it, so we'll just now wait for the pickups to arrive, put those on, and they'll be ready. Oh no, actually, sorry, that's not true. What I was going to do is I was going to set this up first, but I still do need the tuners to arrive, because I don't want I don't want to fit the old ones back in here, and I don't think I've got a set of inline ones which I'm going to use on this. So we'll wait for the tuners to arrive and then we'll do a setup, and providing everything plays, we'll then carry on and do the pickup upgrade. Okay, so what we've got here is standard fret leveling going on, but in the background we're getting warmed up for a bit of nitro spraying, nighttime nitro, because we basically have to get that finished. So we're heating things up and humidifying, dehumidifying things as we speak, and of course it's getting warm. So shortly I'm going to start this process, but I'm actually going to cut off and get on with in between this, and I have to wear a mask, so that's not going to make talking to the camera very useful. So just so you know what I'm doing, as ever, I am setting out to fret level. Now this, actually I played it just now, and this guitar is almost playable as is with a nice low action, so it's in really good shape, the neck, and the frets are pretty good too. Now there are a couple of choking notes which I'm going to attempt to sort out with this fret leveling, and also the frets are pretty tired looking, so they could do with a clean up anyway, although that's not the primary, it's not in and of itself a reason for doing fret leveling. So here we go. I'm just going to try and do as little as possible to make sure everything plays, so I'll test as I go along and check and sort of see what diagnostic information this tool gives me back, which is always very useful. It tells me where we are and what's high and what's low. So on the first string, the priority is making sure the string plays all its notes. Hey, temperature's 18 and it's 69. Right, that's the priority on the first thing. Now on the second one we use the same calibration, and from second one onwards the priority is to get each note playing. Then it's to ensure that the bends on the previous string work as well. So we want to be able to bend across into the B track and into the G track on this guitar to make sure all those notes play cleanly as well. Okay, so again, just play all the notes and check it out. Okay, now bend. Tiny little ziz in the G track, which is now probably going to get taken care of. So this is really in good shape and hardly having to do anything for this, which is good because they're not brand new frets, so we don't want to be taking anything off, or take as little material off as possible. But we, you know, starting out in a good place, and we should get to where we want to go very easily. I should have the heater on the whole time. The look of it alien-esque when I put on my mask in a minute. Now they weren't playing at all. A couple of notes up there were not playing at all earlier on, so that's good. They're freed up. It's just double check the calibration here, and that's still good. A little bit more on here, and then we'll move across, and I will go off camera. What I'll do after this, again off camera I think, just so I can get on with other stuff with my mask on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-profile the frets, which means take all the flat spots and re-profile them with this tool, and that means we can turn the flat topped frets back into arch shaped frets, which is the way they should be. So, okay, a tiny bit more curvature now as we go over to this side. Alright, so yeah, I'll do that, reshape the frets, and then I'll also then polish them all out up to a nice playing condition. At the same time I'll clean the neck as well, the fingerboard, because it's pretty grubby, and that's it's well overdue a good clean. So this will be really nice and fresh looking by the time that's done. Sorry, I've talked my way through this now, but anyway, but I'll come back basically when I'm ready to re-string. Actually, in the meantime, I'll also put on find a string tree and put that on as well. Yeah, I'll come back when it's ready to restring, and that will be near the end of the setup and the refurb. And then what I'll do is I'll take it inside and play it for a day or so and make sure I'm happy with the way it sounds, and also get a sense of how these Warman pickups sound, because they're a new one on me, and I'd like to have them as an option to choose. They're very low cost budget. I mean, budget in a nice sense of the word. They're affordable. So that if they're good, then there'll be a definite option or an alternative to things like the Wilkinsons. Okay, that's a little bit overbent now. Alright, so I haven't gone off camera, I've just talked my way through all this, but a tiny bit more. I'll go off camera when I've finished this last bit, and then I'll get into spraying. So it's a difficult thing. Obviously it's a very small enclosed space, so I have to have a mask and occasionally ventilate the place, but the neighbours aren't terribly thrilled when they smell any solvent, which I've done my best to accommodate that, but you can't always, particularly when you've got a queue of things and you're running behind schedule because you're not being blessed with the right days for it. Anyway, so that's kind of taken over from that right now. Going to play well. Okay, see you when I'm ready to restring. Okie dokie. I'm doing spraying, so you're going to have to put up with me for a minute. Either that one, it's all dead. I'm going to restring this now. We're nearly finished. So the commentary won't be very interesting, but at least you'll see what I'm doing. I'm going to string it with 10s because it felt good with 10s. So, and then I shall take it in the house and play it. I'm going to do that tonight, so I'm going to get this bit done. It's warm in here now, 22.5 degrees. Woohoo! So, that's how it goes when you don't have the facilities you really need. We're getting there, building up enough cover, and I can close everything down and let it cool off.
Okay. Right. Oh, street tree as well, you'll notice. Fender style one. Okay, number 3. Number 3. Number 4. Oops, dropped on the floor. Number 4. 4 on the floor. Five, just about alive. And number 6. Okay. Bigger. Okay, let's put these away. Right, tuner, stretch. Okay now. now done, ladies and gentlemen, a Korean or Indian Strat, souped up, new pickups, new tuners, fret leveled, cleaned up, tidied up, and shielded, ready to go. Just need some more screws on here, which we shall find now. And here, home and dry. Take it indoors and play it. So that's your lot. Pick up screws, pick up screws. Push it screws there. Let's pick up screws. Used. Where's the used ones? Come on. Used. Pick out screws. I'll put them somewhere else. Okay. Chrome. These are new, but what the heck, it's not going to hurt anyone. Okay. There we have it. Okay. That's that. Okay. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. We are home dry. Good, lovely. That is way better than you have any right to expect it to be. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.